So when 2020 hit, that was the straw that broke the camel's back for us, just to see how quickly the government would be willing to continually keep your business from being able to serve and be of use, and also to have a means of income to provide for your family, to see how quickly the government would be willing to just shut everything down and not open it up for months and months and months and months, made us realize that this state doesn't care. This California and the state government was not thinking about my family. It wasn't thinking about my family's well-being. It was thinking about its own political gain. And we said, this is it. We have to go. So we're out here in a more rugged area of Tennessee, up north from Nashville, and in a city called Cross Plains. So sharing a little bit more about my story, I couldn't share it without having my children near me, because a large part of why we moved out to Tennessee has to do with my family and my kids. So this is Faye. She's about to turn 2 in a few months, and then I have my 2 other boys playing over there with the pink elephant. We're at an antique shop up here in Cross Plains, Tennessee, about 25 minutes from where we live in Hendersonville, and it's beautiful landscape. This is a lovely area, especially when it's green. Right now it's winter time. But just to share a little bit more about why we ended up moving, I had grown several businesses out in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was born and raised pretty much in the Bay. And as time passed, I just began to realize more and more that California and the lifestyle of California living really had a great deal of burden placed upon you. Times changed pretty sadly in the wrong direction in California. Especially as a business owner, it became more and more difficult to be able to run a profitable business. The thought of even growing was painful. Excuse me, was painful to consider because it just didn't make sense that I would be growing and expanding, and the state would just be coming in to take more and more from me. And obviously the cost of living was getting more, taxes was becoming even more prevalent, and just the politics altogether became harder and harder. Eventually what ended up happening, we had decided back in 2018 that we wanted to move as a family, considering that we wanted to build a legacy for my little ones, to have an inheritance that we could give them, especially land and a business eventually that they could jump into and use as a resource as they got older. It just became clear to us that we had to move. We had to find some way of being able to settle ourselves down in a place where our kids could have a brighter future and less intrusion by the government, and allow for them to have a greater opportunity. And not to mention that taxes just kept going up, gas prices kept going up. It became harder and harder to be able to make a profit. Hiring people was just so much legwork and high costs for insurance, workman's comp. It was a pain. And at this time, I couldn't afford to buy a house. I wasn't able to buy a house. We were renting, and we ended up having to move 40 miles out of the East Bay in Oakland, so that we could afford the rent, because rents had just skyrocketed. So, excuse me, I was commuting 4 hours a day. That was my daily commute to get to the Bay Area. And it was only a 40-mile drive. Compared to 40 miles out here, I mean, you can drive 40 miles in an hour out here, or even less, depending on the time of the day. Out there, I was taking 2 hours just to go one way, and so it was just a decision on my wife's and my part to move on. We needed to say goodbye to California. We needed to say goodbye to the high taxes, to the crazy politics, to the lack of conservative values and family values that just kept getting eroded more and more year after year. And because we wanted to build something for our children, I needed to consider moving somewhere with my family where business was encouraged, business was looked at as a benefit and not something to be exploited as a government, trying to exploit the hardworking, entrepreneurial, self-employed individual. And Tennessee had all those qualities, along with conservative values, along with family-centric values. And so we decided in 2018 we're going to move, and Tennessee was on our radar. 2020 came, and that changed everything for us. My business pretty much died overnight because of the lockdowns, and there was no, it really didn't, there was no respite, honestly. We'd have our moments where the governor would have the lockdowns raised for maybe a week or two, and then boom, we'd get locked down again. And it's like there was no future. There was just no future. There was no hope. And to this day, it's still, I think it was only about a month ago, or maybe a few weeks ago, that finally the Governor Newsom actually opened up the state. It was difficult, very difficult. So when 2020 hit, my business, I owned two businesses. One I sold in 2018 is an electrical contracting company that I had built over a span of several years that had grown substantially, but I ended up selling it to my partner. And I had a professional window cleaning company that I had started back in 2011 and was doing quite well. Had a large client base. But 2020 hit, and the California lockdowns just basically wiped out any future that I might have. And with the thought of, taxes and higher cost of living, more political madness. I mean, we were dealing with, at that time, in the beginning of January, we had the new bill that got passed requiring or limiting subcontracting, so that it became far more expensive to be able to outsource work to subcontractors the way it used to be. And then you had talks of the what was being called the rich tax, which was a tax on the wealthy that would follow you whether you lived in California or not for the next 10 years. I mean, these type of policies kept growing and growing, made us decide we had to get out, and we had to get out quickly. I wanted to get out before the elections. So it took a lot of effort. We sold everything. We got a small U-Haul, U-Box, packed everything and our belongings in there. At the time we were renting because I couldn't afford to buy a house. Everything out there is just so expensive in the Bay Area. And we came out here. The opportunities out here were far more abundant and are far more abundant. Currently I'm I'm now a realtor and am enjoying the fruits of our labor, having moved out to this part of the country. Besides just the beauty of it, there's just a much more conservative view of life out here. Family is a big central part of a lot of people's values here in Tennessee, and business is extremely encouraged. It's a very business-friendly state, and that was something that I definitely wanted to be a part of and have my family grow up in, because my goal is to be able to leave an inheritance and a legacy for my kids and for my grandkids. I've always wanted that, and I want property, I want land, and I want for my kids to be able to enjoy that and have that resource available to them. So we moved back in August of 2020, and now here we are. We're not looking back. We're looking forward to the future and the exciting things that are ahead. And my desire is to be able to share this story with you and all that we're going through as a family and the changes that we've had to endure, so that you can also be encouraged and have a clear idea of what you'll be experiencing once you come out here and decide to move your family and enjoy the fruits of a new life out in a freer, more faith-loving and affluent lifestyle that you can enjoy here in Tennessee.